This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The governor of Kenya's capital arraigned in court to answer to graft charges. We update you on the positive transformation on China's Xinjiang region. And jubilation across Africa after crowning of South African Zozibini Tunzi as the 2019 Miss Universe. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers, and with you for the business news today is Uche.
Thank you, Hannah. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa defends his decision to rescue the country's national airline. And more drivers in Egypt convert to dual-fuel cars as the government removes petrol subsidies. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, back to you.
Thank you so much, Uche. We'll see you a little bit later. Well, we begin with the effort to fight corruption internationally. A United Nations report indicates that up to $1 trillion is paid in bribes and approximately $2.6 trillion is stolen annually. This represents more than 5% of global GDP. In Africa, Kenya is among the countries that have embarked on an aggressive anti-corruption drive. Just last week, the capital city's Governor Mike Mbuvi Nsonko was arrested over graft charges amounting to about $3.5 million. He was arraigned in court today. Well, corruption is often listed as one of the leading obstacles to Africa's economic and social development. Africans have been speaking about this. Here's some of the views from Uganda, South Africa, Nigeria, and Zimbabwe.
What the government does is to constantly review its efforts and energies in the fight against corruption. Of course, corruption, if anyone says corruption is going to be eliminated, they would be daydreaming, because corruption is an old sin like prostitution in the Bible. It's always been there, but how do you handle? So government throws everything it has in mitigation, in curbing it, in being serious about enforcement, and that's what this drive was all about.
Someone goes to prison, yes, but then they know when they come back after 5 years, their money is hidden somewhere. They'll just continue their life. So that's a risk anyone may be willing to take. If I have a job, I say, let me suffer in Luzira for 5 years. When I come back, my 700 million is somewhere. Maybe a sacrifice once. So corruption can go away if salaries are good, prompt, if benefits are given to the people.
It's something that can't be won in one day. It is a process. It is a journey. The most important thing is to declare and start on that journey. 1,000-mile journey begins with one step. So I think we've taken up the right steps. We have started to fight the corruption, to fight it, to bring it down, to eradicate it out of the country. So it's a journey with one step. And due to the fact that the president came up openly saying we want to deal away with corruption, is the right thing to do. We may not win it tomorrow, it may not be the other year, but at least we've started on the journey to eradicate corruption.
I certainly think the intentions are there, but I'm not sure that those intentions have actually resulted in actual work on the ground. I think that the fact that we still haven't seen major arrests of people that we know have been implicated in some of these big corruption cases, for me, is an issue. It says that people can get away with corruption and a slap on the wrist, and off they go into the sunlight. For me, that's a concern. I think if we are to deal with corruption at a very serious level, we have to see people starting to be arrested for these kinds of things. The one thing I have certainly experienced in my own personal life is that corruption has a direct impact in every single aspect of our ability to grow our economy.
At least there are some sectors where they're trying to tackle it. But it seems there are some people who are not being investigated because they are loyal to the ruling party. The president is trying, but officials at the lower levels are not following through on his wishes to deal with corruption. We want to have lifestyle audits for all MPs and ministers, and also investigate anyone who has received agricultural imports to find out if they used them for the intended purpose.
In my view, there hasn't been any change in how corruption is being dealt with. Things haven't changed from the way they were in the past. I think they need to be more forceful and start dealing with corruption from the top. Even the Anti-Corruption Commission itself should be reconstituted because the chairperson is the wife of a minister. So we doubt if she will have the commitment to go after other high-ranking officials.
Ministers are arrested but granted bail, and that's the end of it. If they were tougher on those high-ranking officials, then everyone would be scared of engaging in corruption. But it's as if we see no action on ministers, then we won't stop corruption. Action has to start from the top.
I believe the corruption they are fighting is a selective corruption, and the main people who are corrupt are still in the system. And the government know about them, and they are not really doing anything about it.
You cannot prosecute one person for corruption and go to another state or two other states and raise the hand of the governors of those states as the party flag bearers, and you call yourself Mr. Integrity. You are not doing enough. If you go and somebody has been shown to be corrupt on TV, and you go and still endorse him to come out as your party flag bearer in an election, it tells a lot.
To some extent, according to my own level of understanding, based on what has happened so far, I believe, very much believe that government will fight it to some certain extent, even if it's not absolutely. You know, there are many people who is untouchable before this administration. Today, they have already, locked them behind the bar.
The government is trying in its own way, but my advice is that let it not be one-sided corruption fight, because corruption is a kanga one, which must be fight with all sincerity of mind. But in a situation whereby, because one person is in your own side and you are trying to be sentimental, that is not corruption or fighting corruption. So it actually exists in Nigeria, but with the sincerity of heart and purpose, the government can achieve the goal.
We'll stay with that story here. CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy with a look at what is being done to curb corruption in Africa.
Corruption is reportedly one of the greatest threats to Africa's stability and development, and yet all around the continent, many governments are slow to act against it. Citizens who decide to take a stand against the corruption that affects them have in many cases struggled to hold their governments to account. Their very lives and futures are affected, and yet they have continued to fight on. In Kenya, some senior public officials have stepped aside in recent months or been suspended pending corruption investigations.
Mindful of my cardinal responsibility, which is to serve Kenyans, as bestowed upon me by the Constitution, my administration has opted for an all-out assault on corruption.
This has been viewed as a genuine step in the right direction. Some African leaders have clearly stated that there will be no sacred cows under their leadership, eliciting considerable optimism, but reservations remain.
Do not wait to be anything else or anybody else to fight against corruption. It starts with me, it starts with you. Don't wait to be the president of this country to start fighting corruption. That's a lie. The struggle to fight corruption starts from where you are and what you do.
Last week, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni rallied citizens in an unprecedented corruption walk, a move derided by critics as a publicity stunt. But the Ugandan leader insists his government is on the right track in the fight against corruption.
The laws are in place. I don't think there is any law we have not put on the statute books. The problem is with the implementation.
While the war on corruption has been loud across much of the African continent, Many also acknowledge that scandal after scandal continue to unfold. One of the key recommendations from experts is that African governments should put in place and enforce laws that address stolen assets, the proceeds of corruption, crime and money laundering. While most people in Africa feel that corruption increased in their country, a majority also feel optimistic that they as citizens can make a contribution towards the fight against corruption. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya. Economic data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives.
Reporting from Nairobi City Center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference.
Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed says he will not interact with the media during his trip to Norway to receive the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize. The move has sparked controversy with the Norwegian Nobel Committee. CGTN's Kaleta Manjohi has more on this.
The 2019 Nobel Peace Prize awarded to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has his supporters excited both at home and abroad. Some say it gives the country a positive image overseas.
And usually Ethiopian is known for a negative, or drought, starvation, and all of these things, and being poor country. But to have a leader of that country been giving that kind of award, it is just an honor for most of the Ethiopian, and something to be proud of.
Abiy Ahmed's office says the prize reflects his style of leadership, which tags on the philosophy of creating cooperation.
A testament that if we have a resolve to work hard together for a common purpose and in alignment, a lot of the challenges that we have faced before, a lot of the challenges that we're facing currently is something that we can actually move over, that we can actually create a bridge to overcome this.
But as he shines back home, the Prime Minister has faced criticism for refusing to speak to media, as is the Nobel Prize norm. His office has said he has a tight schedule, but reaction to his silence is mixed.
At some point, I don't understand his terrible because, the one journalist in Norway, he may not understand the details of the complexity of the situation here in Ethiopia, so they may challenge him in a negative way. So in that way, I don't understand, but it's not something difficult to do because they have their own audience. And also this Nobel Prize has a global image, so we have to cooperate with them to keep the glorification of the event.
Others say he needs to avoid distraction.
The work has to be done back home. A genuine dialogue between the people. The issues that really eating us alive from within has to be confronted with open transparency, genuinely talking about it. This is what we have on the thing that, we need to talk to each other, not about each other. By talking to each other, we can build trust.
The Peace Accolade recognizes the Prime Minister's efforts towards regional peace.
The Nobel Committee highlighted in particular Abiy Ahmed's efforts in breaking an over 2-decade stalemate between Eritrea and his country, mediating in the Sudan conflict and offering to mediate in the Kenya and Somalia maritime conflict.
Abiy Ahmed will not be the first to refuse to talk to the media as he receives his prize. In 2009, Barack Obama, the then President of the United States, made the same decision. Kaleta Manjohi for CGTN in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Kenya's war on corruption took a dramatic turn after the flamboyant governor of the capital city, Nairobi, was charged with corruption on Monday. Mike Sonko was arrested on Saturday after what police say was an attempt to flee the country. A court in Nairobi will make a bail ruling on Wednesday, meaning the governor will spend another night in jail. CGTN's Robert Nagila has more.
In the end, it was a humbling experience for Nairobi's governor, Mike Sonko, as he appeared in court on Monday, charged over corruption allegations over a $3.5 million payment.
to the current charges.
Known for his flashy lifestyle and bravado, Sonko appeared subdued, hardly audible in his responses to the corruption charges leveled against him. The prosecution had urged the court to reject his bail application, saying he is a flight risk. On Saturday, the governor was detained in dramatic fashion about 300 kilometers from Nairobi after what police say was an attempt to flee the country to avoid arrest. A helicopter had to be sent to bring him back to the capital after he resisted attempts to detain him and fought off police officers with his aides. Defense lead lawyer Cecil Miller urged the court to grant the governor bail, saying he required urgent medical attention. Chief Magistrate Douglas Oyoti will make a ruling on the bond application on Wednesday, meaning the governor will spend another 2 nights in jail. He joins a long list of high-profile civil servants and politicians charged over corruption in recent months, including the former finance minister who was relieved of his duties in July. Seen here paying thousands of dollars for a gold chain in Dubai, Sonko, known for his gold chains and designer wear, has never been one to shy away from controversy.
Yeah, this one is no diamonds.
Can you arrest him now? No. You do what you want.
Exposing intimate recorded conversations with anyone he disagreed with or as a show of his influence. He once put the president on speakerphone during a land dispute to call off the police.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
There is no more people calling and saying, things are bad, help me. Those phone numbers were switched off. Now defend yourselves.
Those days, it seems, are long gone. Robert Nagela, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, 3 years ago, China's Xinjiang region was rocked by terrorism with hundreds of lives lost. Officials say things are different today. On Monday, Chinese authorities spoke about the changes, saying those changes have created prosperity and stability.
Xinjiang is prosperous and safe, the key message prompted by the autonomous region's top leaders.
Xinjiang has achieved social stability and long-term security. It has not seen any violent terrorist attacks for 3 consecutive years. Xinjiang's GDP has seen an annual increase of 8.5% since 2012. Over 2 million people have been lifted out of poverty.
Tourism has been a major contributor to the local economy. Last year, over 150 million tourists from both China and abroad visited Xinjiang. That was up 40% year-on-year. Meanwhile, China's far western region is also the core of the Silk Road economic belt. In the first 10 months of this year, total imports and exports rose by nearly 30% year-on-year, among which imports increased by over 60%. Authorities say the peace and stability Xinjiang is enjoying today did not come easily.
Xinjiang has long suffered deeply from terrorism and extremism. Facing serious threats, Xinjiang has been both fighting terrorism and addressing its root cause. That includes enhancing legal publicity and education and lawfully establishing vocational education and training centers.
However, these efforts were often ignored or even vilified by some Western politicians. Last Tuesday, the U.S. House of Representatives approved a bill which calls for tougher measures to be taken against Beijing.
We are sending a message to Beijing. America is watching, and we will not stand silent.
The Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act recommends targeted sanctions on members of the Chinese government, as well as bans on the sale of U.S.-made goods to any state agent in Xinjiang.
We think the United States should abandon ideological prejudice and not engage in double standards in the fight against terrorism. That would only lead them to stand against the 1.4 billion people of China, the international community, human morality, and conscience.
Monday's press conference released numerous facts about the socio-economic development of Xinjiang. It also refuted a claim by some Western media that Xinjiang has committed human rights violation. At the end of the briefing, authorities invite journalists around the world to travel to Xinjiang and see it for themselves. So well, CGTN, Beijing.
At least 5 people have been killed and many others missing after a volcano suddenly erupted in New Zealand. Dozens of tourists were near the crater's rim just minutes before the explosion. Many of the victims were from a cruise ship visiting White Island. It's unclear exactly how many people are missing, but it's thought to be in the double digits. Police say they're not seeing any signs of life on the island. Well, it's time now for us to take a short break. When we return, more news, including jubilation across Africa after the crowning of South African Zozibini Tunzi as the 2019 Miss Universe. Why scientists are excited about the properties of a plant found in the Ethiopian highlands.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt,
along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. South African Zozibini Tunzi has been crowned Miss Universe 2019. The 26-year-old beauty queen beat 90 other contestants on Sunday during the pageant, which was held in Atlanta. The 2019 Miss Universe is known as a passionate activist engaged in the fight against gender-based violence. Miss Puerto Rico, Madison Anderson, was the first runner-up, while Miss Mexico, Sofia Aragon, was the second runner-up. 2 favorites ahead of the competition, Miss Thailand and Miss Philippines, didn't make it into this year's final 10. Well, it's a big win for Africa. Let's get more perspective on this. First to South Africa, which is basking in the glory of receiving that title of 2019 Miss Universe. We're going to now hand over to Renee Delcarme in Cape Town. Renee, how has the crowning of Zozibini Tunzi as a global beauty queen been received?
Well, most South Africans awoke to the amazing news that our very own Zozibini Tunzi had been crowned Miss Universe. There's been such a huge outpouring of excitement, of love and adoration for her. You just have to look at her social media. People who have worked with her, people who have known her all her life, people who have known her since she's been a student, as a public relations student back in the day here in Cape Town. They've known how hard she's worked and how she's always dreamt of winning a major competition. She's worked extremely hard in the beauty business as well. Many of the people I spoke to in the beauty pageant business today describe her as a sister. They call her intelligent and loyal and humble. So many, many amazing compliments coming her way today. Ordinary South Africans I spoke to earlier describe her as beautiful and gorgeous and all those amazing things. But they also say that they really admire the way she has carried herself with great grace and elegance, and they admire the fact that she is super smart. She comes across as a very strong, black, proud African woman. And talking about black, proud women, we go now to Nigeria, which has also been a dominant player on the global beauty stage. Let's now cross to Abuja, where my colleague Ejek Mangut is standing by. Ejek, how have beauty queens in Nigeria helped to promote ordinary Nigerians?
Yes, Renee, beauty pageants have been in Nigeria since the 1950s, and it has evolved. We've seen beauty queens like Agbani Darego, who won Miss World in 2001, and those who have come after her, and even the present Miss Nigeria, use their platforms to promote peace, to promote tourism, to also shine a light on issues like gender-based violence, the plight of people living with disabilities, and just highlighting some of the social issues that we have in Nigeria, and trying to partner with organizations, international organizations, local organizations, to try and see how they can proffer solution within the period that they are reigning as queens. And also, if you look at it, it's quite significant to note that it's not often that we see black contestants win in a global stage in beauty pageants, but there appears to be a recent trend or change to this, especially in America. Let's bring Katie Gregory, who is in New York. Katie, can you tell us how African beauty is being celebrated in America?
Well, Miss Universe describes the winner of this year's competition, Zozibini Tunzi, as a proud advocate for natural beauty who encourages women to love themselves the way they are. And that push towards natural beauty is certainly one trend we're definitely noticing here in the US. Now, particularly in the realm of hair, which of course has been also a focus of Zozibini's win as well. Now, in fact, a report out by research firm Mintel found that African American women are fully embracing their natural hair. According to the report, some 40% of black women here are most likely to wear their hair natural without any chemicals or any heat styling. Now, as more African American women give up the idea that hair has to be straight to be beautiful, we are seeing hairstyles that range from the very simple TWA, the teeny weeny afro, for example, to so-called Bantu knots, or those small coiled buns sprinkled throughout the hair. Now, celebrities like Rihanna have worn Bantu knots in recent years, and also braids, hair twists and dreadlocks are other common, more natural hairstyles. Now, this may come as a surprise, but according to that research as well, this new enthusiasm for natural hair is actually driving an increase in sales of styling products in the US. So, as an advocate for natural beauty, Zozibini Tunzi may certainly help to encourage these trends going forward. Overall, though, the news of a South African winning the Miss Universe title is, of course, causing plenty of excitement in Africa. But it's not the first time, is it, Hannah?
In 2017, Demi Nell Peters was crowned Miss Universe, and she was a South African. So this is a huge win for South Africa yet again. But also, as you said, Katie, for the entire continent, not just that it's a huge win and that we have somebody on the global stage who's gotten this title, but just as you say so rightly, and this comes through from everybody that's spoken, from Cape Town, Abuja, and from you, Katie, in the US, is just this huge move that came in when it comes to natural hair movement, a huge conversation that is going on across the globe with women of color, especially here on the African continent. And it comes out a lot in what Zozibini said herself when she won. She said when she grew up in a world where a woman who looks like she does with her color skin was not considered beautiful, and women with her hair not considered beautiful. And so one of the things that Zozibini is really strong on, and it also came out in the answers that she gave in this pageant, was just how much she gives in terms of developing young women. So for young women to see somebody who looks like Zozibini, who's got her beautiful hair and just rocking that natural hair, was a huge win for the African continent. And so, yeah, that was something that came out very strongly from everybody. So one of the questions that I want to ask to all of you is, some analysts are against beauty pageants, which they argue objectify women. What's the dominant view in your respective countries? Katie, I'm going to start with you.
Well, here in the US, beauty pageants have a long history and a pretty mixed reputation, actually. The annual Miss America competition, for example, dates back to 1921, when it started as a bathing beauty review. Now, over the years, critics have called the pageant sexist, racist, and objectifying of women. They've said the beauty contests reinforce power dynamics in our culture, whereby women are judged by appearance. and the beauty pageant industry has really had to take steps to address these concerns. In 2018, Miss America dropped its well-known swimsuit competition and announced it will no longer judge contestants based on their physical appearance. It also dropped the name pageant in favour of competition. Now today, Miss America says it judges participants on their talent performances, social impact, and also their interviews. It also says the contest empowers women and gives them the opportunity to earn scholarships and make a difference in their communities. In terms of the public though, viewership of the live event still actually appears to be slipping. Some 4.3 million tuned in to watch it last year. That was actually 23% lower than the year before. And the next competition, Miss America 2020, is actually this month on December 19th. So we'll have to see if more people will tune in this year.
Ajay, can wait to ask you the same question, just going back to what the main dominant feel is in your country with this idea that beauty pageants objectify women.
Well, in Nigeria, it's more of mixed feelings because there are some who believe that beauty pageants should be banned because they send the wrong message about beauty, because people tend to pay attention or more attention to their outward appearance instead of their inner beauty and what they can offer, and then it does not, they feel it does not capture people who are physically challenged, and some others feel that it goes against their cultural and religious beliefs. And we also have people who believe that beauty pageants, or those who win those pageants, can use them as tools for social development, for promoting peace, for promoting tourism, and shedding a light generally on some of the social issues that we have in the country. So many Nigerians have sort of celebrated the win by South Africa, and they see it as not just a win for South Africa, but for the African continent as a whole.
Renee, we're coming to you with a black African woman winning the global pageant of the pageant of all pageants, pretty much, rocking her natural hair and just representing the entire continent. I suppose women of color across the globe. What does this mean for South Africa, just in terms of the perspective of people saying that this objectifies women?
Well, as you know, this is the third time that South Africa has claimed the crown at the Miss Universe pageant. The first time was back in 1978 when Margaret Gardner won during the then dark days of apartheid. So in South Africa, while we do have one school of thought where people are very strongly opposed to the what they call the objectifying of contestants in beauty pageants, we also have a long history of being part of the beauty pageant business. So what we had in South Africa mostly was a situation where women like myself, when back in the day, we didn't grow up thinking that a strong black woman, a beautiful woman like Zozi would ever have that beautiful crown on her head. I mean, I get goosebumps just telling you about it, just seeing that this morning. But what I can also say is that when Zozi accepted the crown, she spoke about leadership, she spoke about education, she spoke about so many amazing things that she hopes to use her platform for. So it gives us hope as black women that not only are we starting to tear down those barriers by looking the part, rocking our natural hair and putting the crown on that on our heads proudly, we also are going to be using the opportunity as black women to tear down barriers, to raise awareness with many issues that black women never had the opportunity to do before. So plenty of excitement here in South Africa.
Thank you so much to all three of you. It was good speaking about this. Well, we go to Egypt's capital, Cairo now, which this week hosted a group of Libyan officials to discuss the upcoming Berlin conference on Libya. The delegation included Fatih al-Majbari, a defector from the Government of National Accord. Al-Majbari previously served on the Presidential Council of Libya in Fayez al-Sarraj's government. CGTN's Adel El-Mourouki spoke to him about the recent developments in Libya, including attacks in its capital, Tripoli. This is what he had to say.
Why and when did you decide to leave the Government of National Accord?
I decided to leave Tripoli when the military attacks against the capital began last April. I believe that Mr. Fayez al-Sarraj's policies towards the Libyan conflict have failed. The main reason I joined the government of national accord was to end the state of conflict and division in Libya. Our government has been given international recognition and support to fulfill this mission. Unfortunately, al-Sarraj didn't abide by the principles of the Skeirat political agreement, which has given him legitimacy. What happened is that Mr. Fayez al-Sarraj has violated that agreement and has started taking unilateral decisions.
The Libyan National Army forces are holding airstrikes on the capital itself, and they are attempting to take control of the capital. Is that how you wanted to see the future of Libyans?
The catastrophic scenes Tripoli is seeing do not please any sane Libyan. To expose civilians to such danger is definitely sad. We joined the government of national accord to avoid such acts and to find a common ground for Libya. I hold Fayez al-Sarraj responsible for that because the GNA has not accomplished its mission. Restoring stability to Libya and returning to a political solution which leads to a democratic transition requires that the state gains back what we call monopolizing the means of force, meaning that arms are regulated only through the security administrations like the police and the army. Tripoli is far from that reality. The state has no control over many armed groups. Some of these groups are clearly adopting terrorist ideologies, others are militias by definition.
Soon, Libyans should be sitting in Berlin to talk, and many hope an agreement could be produced. But with the ongoing civil war and the fight over the capital Tripoli, do you think it's possible to reach an agreement?
ومن الحروب الأهلية بشكل عام أنها عملية يعني
What we know about civil wars is that it's a long and painful process. Domestic, regional, and international interests clash. Once a state falls into civil war, a big portion of that state's decisions do not come from the citizens of that state. What we truly hope for is that Libyans can reach a kind of settlement. We hope that the regional and international rivals could agree on a solution for Libya. They must realize that their interests will be achieved better when stability and security are restored to Libya. Berlin is a move in the right direction.
Recently, a memorandum of understanding has been announced that was signed between Fayez Sarraj, the head of the government of national accord, and President Erdogan. Libya in general gets bigger border in the Mediterranean Sea. So how did you evaluate this agreement?
هذه الاتفاقية بالذات عبارة عن مثال حي لما ذكرته لك الآن.
This agreement is a clear example of how some countries are looking to get quick benefits from Libya, even if it means long hardships for Libya in the long run. Turkey knows well that Fayez al-Sarraj doesn't have the authority to make such an agreement. Based on the Skeirat agreement, which he gains legitimacy from, he can't sign agreements individually. He must get prior agreements from the Presidential Council. I'm a member of that council and I haven't been informed of the council. It also requires the approval of Parliament, and Parliament is not in agreement with the Presidential Council. For that agreement to come before Berlin talks, it means that Turkey and Fayez al-Sarraj are trying to push this conference to failure. This agreement has put Libya into polarization between the countries of the East Mediterranean, which are in dispute with Turkey.
Thank you very much for being with us, sir.
Well, I'll be standing by to bring you more news making headlines across the continent. But for now, let's take a look at the latest in business news with Uche.
Thank you, Hannah. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa defends his decision to rescue the country's national airline. And more drivers in Egypt convert to dual-fuel cars as the government removes petrol subsidies.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's start off in South Africa, where President Cyril Ramaphosa says South African Airways had to be placed under business rescue. In his latest letter to the nation, Ramaphosa argues that there were no other viable and financially workable options to secure a credible future for the struggling state carrier. Now, last week, Ramaphosa ordered SAA to seek a business rescue as the airline is close to collapse. At the same time, SAA has also been granted a $272 million bailout by the government and banks to give it some breathing room. However, given that the carrier burns at least $34 million on monthly operations, that cash pile is set to only last for a few months. Meanwhile, the number of Egyptians who are switching to dual-fuel vehicles is now accelerating. The move comes as the government pushes motorists there to use cheaper, cleaner and plentiful natural gas. Now, the number of vehicles which are using natural gas currently in Egypt are about 280,000, served by supply stations and conversion centers. An executive plan, however, has been drawn up for the next 3 years to build a roughly 54 natural gas and liquid fuel car stations across the North African nation. The move comes as authorities seek to soften the blow of petrol price hikes, as well as reduce pollution and cut the import bill for liquid fuels. And moving on, the Confederation of Tunisian Citizen Enterprises, better known as Connect, has now launched a new digital platform. The service is in collaboration with the Anima Investment Network. It is aimed at promoting entrepreneurship in the North African economy. Here's CGTN's Adnan Shaushi with more.
The platform, financini.org.tn, is the result of a consultation process initiated in 2016 by the Confederation of Tunisian Citizen Enterprises, Connect, with local entrepreneurs and the Tunisian diaspora, representatives of the Tunisian ecosystem and various institutions.
The objective of the initiative is to mobilize the economic diasporas of Morocco, Senegal and Tunisia in order to promote entrepreneurship and the emergency of a joint investment dynamic.
Over 200 financing and support mechanisms have been identified and are listed on the platform.
The aim of the digital platform is to facilitate the search for adequate financing for Tunisian entrepreneurs and the Tunisian diaspora.
Financini.org.tn also includes profiles of experts and mentors who are available to entrepreneurs seeking information and advice.
There are so many financing mechanisms in Tunisia and Africa. However, entrepreneurs and companies do not have access to reliable information. The new platform will revolutionize the way enterprises work and seek professional consultation.
Tunisian economists maintain that the new tool will list investment opportunities for the benefit of all actors wishing to invest in the North African country. The launch of financini.org.tn was also an opportunity for the inking of an agreement with My Financing project. This platform will ensure the follow-up of the entrepreneurs' financing requests until completion, as well as with the Fusaki company, which aims to be an interface for business transfers. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Let's head to the west of Africa now. Senegal's capital, Dakar, just hosted the first ever African gastronomy competition. We saw chefs from 11 countries in West Africa participating in the event, and they championed the art of cooking and the history of traditional African dishes. Take a look.
Chefs showed up with ready equipment. Their mission to celebrate African know-how in gastronomy and culinary art.
The situation of African gastronomy today requires a real diagnosis. African gastronomy is at the level where it must be put back to the international standard. We must bring vision, intelligence to African gastronomy. We want African gastronomy to be at the side of the great international gastronomy.
The forum also had a taste test session where chefs cooked typical African dishes while upholding international standards.
As a doctor, I think that African gastronomy, through the rich and diverse, is perfectly balanced. When you go from Mali to Senegal, all dishes contain everything the body needs. I think this forum is very interesting as the chefs are reviving the African culture through gastronomy.
The professionals also urged Africans to go back to consuming locally grown foods.
Some imported products have quality control gaps from how they are grown to processing and storage. I urge all Africans to consume local products because they are products that we control very well.
I am very pleased to have been invited because it is great that we are linking the ancestral recipes of Africa with their dietetics. I think Africa is making all the riches at the level of local available foods, so I will always advise to consume raw products rather than taking industrialized products.
The winner received $1,600, the first runner-up received $1,100, and the one in third place received just over $500.
We are very proud to win this competition. We worked with African raw materials to showcase these products. The jury had asked us for creativity and we did it. For my colleagues and I, our dream is to become great cooks to represent Africa worldwide.
This was the first edition of the Gourmet Africa competition, which seeks to bring together chefs with over 20 years' experience from 22 African countries. The organizers aim to open a Pan-African school to train future leaders of gastronomy to spread the tastes of Africa worldwide. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And heading to Ethiopia now, scientists there say that an edible plant grown in the Sidama region could help greatly in efforts to end hunger and starvation. Now, this is due to its drought-resistant properties. The Enset plant grows up to 10 meters high and is now a staple food in many parts of Ethiopia. Here's CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy with the details.
Martha Daniel is harvesting the Enset plant at her farm in the Sidama zone, southern part of Ethiopia. She cuts off the tall plant into sizable pieces and later shreds them to form a pulp.
I will take the pulp and bury it in a pit. I will then mix it and knead it with my hands. Then it will be put together and sealed with leaves. Then after a while, I will turn it into a pulp. It is then taken from there and made it ready for food in different forms. It can be baked like a flatbread or molded into a potato-shaped roll of food. You can also take it along in a food container when you're going on a journey.
The Enset plant is a close relative of the banana. Its orange fruits are, however, full of bullet-like seeds which are indelible. It's a staple food for about 20 million people in the Ethiopian islands. Products from the plant can be used to make bread and porridge, construction and packaging materials, cattle feed and even medicine.
To make a bursame, I first rub the kofame, the final product, on the wooden table called the badiru, and then add some salt and rub it well. And then I'll add a good amount of butter to it. Depending on the amount of butter and the side dishes, you can present it as a bursame or as a house special. Then it will be taken to the main kitchen, where side dishes like spinach and meat will be added to it and served to the customers.
According to scientists, NSET could be a lifesaver to many, as the plant is said to be very drought tolerant. And in Awassa, a town in the Sidama region, culture dishes made out of the plant feature on the menu on several restaurants.
This food is good for your stomach. You can eat as much as you want and it doesn't upset your stomach. It's been 28 years since I started serving it in this town of Hawassa. I've been serving this food for all the 28 years. I even send it abroad. People write to me from abroad and I send it to them. I send it every day.
Although NSET grows wild from Ethiopia down to South Africa, it has only been domesticated in the Ethiopian islands. Scientists, who are now DNA sequencing hundreds of varieties, hope NSET could boost food security in other countries such as Zambia and Malawi. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but coming up later on Global Business Africa, South Africa's Transport Minister places state-owned firm Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, better known as PRASA, under administration with immediate effect. Of course, we'll bring you all the details on that at top of the hour. For now, back to you, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Uche. Well, we are going to take a short break and return your sports news, including World Anti-Doping Agency hands Russia a 4-year Olympic ban for its 2015 doping scandal.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Your sports news. The World Anti-Doping Agency has hit Russia